gentlemen, please welcome.
And we are live once again every Tuesday at 8. Everybody knows it's time for another exciting edition of the MCW Cast. I'm Legacy, MCW announcer Larry Legend.
I'm MCW promoter Dan McDevitt.
And I'm Tara. Welcome to the cast.
Yes, indeed. And Bruiser Strong is in the books. And what an extravaganza that was.
Great night. Good
Yes.
crowd. Good energy.
This was something we waited 10 long months to put into, to bring to fruition. So it was great to gather with friends, family, loved ones, and celebrate and remember someone who has touched all of our lives.
And that's the thing. It was a celebration of
It
the life.
was.
A true-to-life celebration for him and proper like. RJ, we love you, as we all said and expressed that night, and that's why we're here once again on the cast.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 36, right?
36. We're getting back to hoodie weather. We are, we
That's true.
almost gone full circle from being in our. We were bundled up that first edition, and then we kind of revealed more, and now I'm getting back into a lovely piece of merch here, the MCW Cast
right.
hoodie, still available, along with all that great MCW. Pro wrestling merch and cast merch, but yeah. And what about last episode?
Gilberg.
The legend.
Yeah, legendary
He
Gilbert.
had a lot of great stories, didn't he? I haven't seen Gilbert in years, really, or sat down to talk to him. So it was nice to see because he was one of the first people I met when I signed up at MCW. In fact, I remember meeting him in the parking lot. Like I hadn't even gotten out of the door of my car yet, and that was when I met him. So it was nice to go take that trip down memory lane with him.
Yeah, Dwayne's one of those guys. That he's one of a kind. He's one of them. Like Iron Sheik, Bob Starr, guys like that, people like that are like there's only one Gilberg.
Yeah, I felt similarly with Bob Starr. We really didn't even have to say anything most of the cast. We just pitched it to him underhand, and he just would take
Let him
off.
go.
And just spin yard after yard and tell tale after tale. But that's what it's all about. It was sitting around the campfire and listening to the OGs of the game, as it were. Now, would you say that Dwayne would be on the Maryland Mount Rushmore? If there was a Mount Rushmore of Maryland, he'd be up there?
I think you got to give that to him.
Yeah.
He did jobs and all that for years, but then through that, ended up with the Gilberg character and light heavyweight champion, and is definitely one that's memorable.
Yeah.
So I think you got to. I think you have to.
Yeah.
You have to put him in that category.
He was always a star to me, and I expressed this just because I remember Howard Finkel or Mike McGurk or whoever the announcer was already in the ring from Baltimore, Maryland. And I'm like, oh, this guy's from around here. I might see him down at Lexington Market or something, or down at Memorial Stadium.
Yeah.
And eventually I did see him at the Capitol Center before Survivor Series 95. But yeah, an excellent episode, and we've got more to offer you throughout the end of the year. Remember, when you're watching us, enjoying us every Tuesday night at 8, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Give us a like. Join in on the conversation. There's always a live chat going on both the YouTube and the Facebook, and we love to see y'all shouting each other out, giving us feedback. We love to see it, so please join in on the conversation in addition to liking and subscribing.
Right. And if we can't interact with you, because obviously if we're doing the show, if we can't interact with you, there are lots of the MCW roster that do engage with our fans. So, you never know who might turn up.
That's right. I see Ken Dixon lurking Twitter a lot of the time, and he's quick with it. I put out there about Eric Martin, one of our previous guests, and how great of a cast it was with it, and he got right in there with a zinger of "Did you talk about this time?" And it was a gif of Ken giving him the business in Ring of Honor on TV. So,
and of course, if you're listening on the different podcast platforms, Google Play, Apple iTunes, and Pocket Cast.
Yep.
Stitcher.
Breaker, SoundCloud, Radio Public, CastBox, all of that.
There you
yes.
go. Thanks for the assist.
That's right, yeah.
Make sure you subscribe. If you're just listening, make sure you hit the subscribe button because it helps the algorithm on the podcast platforms.
And it gives you, I love little alerts, okay? Sometimes a little alert on your device kind of like makes it more of an event, you know? And I get two alerts. I get the YouTube alert that comes up because I'm subscribed to, MCW Pro on YouTube. And I get the Apple podcast alert where it's like, oh, something's going on. Oh, it's the MCW Cast. So it's kind of fun once you subscribe and you have all that stuff integrated into your text to get those little alerts. Makes you feel kind of important.
I get the Twitch alerts on my phone.
I got to
so
turn on Twitch. I downloaded Twitch, but I'm not that big of a gamer anymore.
See, Twitch is not just for gaming though. It's a whole little community. There's lots of different things.
That's
so
indeed.
I'll engage on Twitch. I follow lots of people on Twitch. And anyway, so I'm still waiting for someone to call me out on Twitter. I said I would respond. I'm still waiting. What's it been, 2 weeks? I put that out there.
It has been, I've said something and tagged you in it, but not really, I don't count.
I'm not responding to that.
It's interesting. Impact Wrestling was hosting like a Twitch watch party when their show would broadcast, and Melissa Santos, the former ring announcer for Lucha Underground, who I admire greatly, just want to say that right now. But Melissa Santos would kind of just be there, like looking at the live chat and interacting with people. So Twitch is a mighty force out there in the social media platform. So yeah, show me a thing or two about Twitch, and maybe I can turn you onto a little tweeting. I know.
So speaking of turned on, let's say turn on your Flashback Friday on YouTube, because we've got a great one this week. It is from 2014 Friday Night Fights, Rebby Sky and Jessie K. So you might know Jessie K as Jessica Carr, WWE female referee, but when she was here in MCW and she trained, coincidentally, at Gilbert's Pro Wrestling Training Academy, she was known as Jessie K, and she was an in-ring performer and killer on the mic as well. She could cut a mean promo. So that is our Flashback Friday for this week, 2014, Rebby Sky and Jessie K. And by the way, Rebby Sky being the wife of Matt Hardy,
who is our guest.
Just happens to be our guest.
I know, you like how I just tied all that together in a
I
nice
was
little
waiting
bow?
for someone to tie that in.
I did.
So.
I did that.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. Guest this week after the break. A guy, obviously,
legend.
Everybody knows, but he also, in the early days of MCW, we were bringing him in. We're going to talk about that, him and Jeff. In the early days of MCW, before they were known worldwide as the Hardy Boys.
Yeah.
Right. I think he's held like 21 titles or something, on in the big companies, but he's held titles here in MCW as well. In fact, he at WrestleMania 2017, he and Jeff made their reemergence in WWE, which I have to say was the loudest crowd reaction I've ever seen in my entire life. But he made that appearance with his brother, and they were the current MCW Tag Team Champions.
Wow,
That's
what a
right.
piece of trivia. I remember
know,
that.
See?
I was working for ROH, and the night before they had fought the Young Bucks, so it was just like, that was why it was one of the biggest pops, I think, is it was kind of like in the veil of night, like how Congress passes a bill that we don't know about,
Right.
The whole whoop, 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 and there they are coming out. So it was just like shocking. It's really shocking moment. And you were there?
We were there, yeah. And Bruiser was there too. We had taken the kids, and we had like a whole family vacation. It was my mom, Bruiser, the kids, and we had a premonition that this might take place.
Premonition.
But it did not mean it did not dampen our excitement too. I mean, we've been in the business 20 plus years,
You were still
and
jumping
we
up
were
and
on
down.
our feet.
Yeah.
We were way up high, but it was the goosebumps. The crowd, the arena shook. I know that CM Punk got quite a reaction a few weeks back, but I don't know that it was what the Hardys got at WrestleMania. And I've been to plenty of shows. I've been to multiple WrestleManias, everything, and I have never heard or felt a reaction like that.
Dan, I bet you did when Austin stunned McMahon. That was probably the whole earth was shaking that night. What?
Well, I was too busy getting ready to lock him up for putting his hands on Mr. McMahon.
You were laying down the law.
I wasn't paying attention to the crowd. I was paying attention to the law that was being broken in the ring, the assault and battery.
That's right.
On
absolutely.
Mr. McMahon.
And rightfully so.
Right.
You should have been doing that.
So, all right. Well, I guess we'll take our break and we'll be back
With Matt Hardy.
We hope you're enjoying this week's episode of the MCW Cast. At MCW Pro Wrestling, much like many small businesses throughout the country, the pandemic has presented many challenges. For a company like ours that hosts events with live audiences, the impact has been even more severe, and all of our forms of revenue have been cut off. In order to continue to engage with our fans on a regular basis, we made the decision to begin to produce the MCW Cast and are providing it for absolutely no cost on Facebook Live, Twitch, YouTube, and SoundCloud. If you'd like to support us during these challenging times, you can do so in several ways. The most popular way is to buy us a coffee to help fuel the cast. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/MCWcast, and for just $3, you can buy the cast a coffee, or you can choose to become a member of the cast for just $5 a month and receive several special perks. That's buymeacoffee.com/MCWcast. You can also contribute directly on Cash App, MCW Wrestling, or on Venmo, MCW-Wrestling. You can also show your support for the MCW Cast while sporting some great gear by going to teespring.com/stores/MCWcast to pick up a full line of official MCW Cast merchandise, from coffee mugs and face coverings to t-shirts and sweatshirts. Also, don't forget to comment in the threads on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch to get your questions answered on a future episode. And you can also send us a tweet using the hashtag AskMCWCast. Thank you for your support, and now, back to the show.
And we are back here live in studio with probably our biggest guest today, Big Money Matt Hardy. Matt, welcome to the MCW Cast.
Finally, Big Money Matt has come back to Joppa. I'm here.
It's been a while. We were just talking about it. Baltimore's like a year and a half, right?
It feels like a decade.
Yeah.
It's been an eternity, through this whole pandemic. I mean, I got to go eat at one of our favorite spots, Jimmy's Seafood.
Yeah.
Jimmy's famous seafood. It was absolutely delectable. But it seems like it has been years since I've been there. It's been literally a year and a half, but it feels like it's been 5 years. It's been that long.
Did you sit upstairs in that new area that he's got?
No, we sat inside actually, but it was cool.
Yeah, did you see that? What
nice
he did? He took that upstairs bar out and they built on like
yeah, it
they're
looks
doing
great.
little
And he has
live
all
concerts and
those
all.
outside areas.
Yeah,
and
they
that.
did all that during the pandemic.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
It's crazy how that has become a thing. In North Carolina, there's a lot of places that added outside dining areas just because of the pandemic. It just has changed our way of life in so many ways.
yeah, I guess you guys probably had the same thing down there with a lot of restaurants we lost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of mom and pops for sure.
Yeah.
It made it really hard on the the single little homegrown business owner.
Yeah, and John, he stepped up. He raised a couple $100,000. He was doing a fund, and Barstool Sports was helping him for like Baltimore City, because that's what John was like. He was like, man, there's a lot of like mom and pop restaurants that have run. They don't even have a website. They've run
They still use paper tickets
he's
and
like,
stuff
a
for
lot
orders,
of little
Right.
older people that have ran a restaurant for 40 or 50 years the same way, and they don't even have a website. He's like, they can't make it.
Yeah, and it's people who've done it their whole life. So many
Right.
people lost their businesses. I know
Yeah.
specifically, like I know New York and like big cities in California were hit so hard, because they had those long aggressive lockdowns and whatnot. And it was it just made it so hard for the mom and pops, man.
Yeah. Well, you guys are doing good.
Yeah, AEW's killing it right now. What
Yeah.
a unique time in wrestling, and it's very cool to be there because we can feel the momentum. Like each and every week we have these white hot shows, and Tony Khan is doing such a great job of being on the pulse of the wrestling business in 2021. And I really think one of the things that helps more than anything is that at heart he's like a huge fan, and the fans that are following wrestling the most closely now, and that are probably the most outspoken and most demanding, I think in his core, he understands that, and he almost has that feeling. So I feel like that helps him put together a better show
Right.
and tell stories that are more geared toward today's audiences, where Vince, being 70 plus, it's much tougher for him to do that, and especially be on the pulse of modern day pop culture.
Right. And do you think maybe he was like dominated and put everybody else out of business, almost like some complace, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he got complacent.
Yeah, and he's always had a preference, for specific types of wrestlers and things like that. I mean, that hasn't been any particular big secret or anything. So, some of what is white hot right now is not the style that has been Vince's favorite. So, it's
No, exactly, and also I think it's just important to add in there, like I feel like at AEW right now, our biggest thing is like obviously we have the TNT deal, which is a huge source of money, but we still are very heavily focused on doing business to consumer, business. where I feel like now more than ever, Vince McMahon and WWE, they're doing business to business, so to say.
Right.
You know, their big money came in from, you know, acquiring the Fox deal and procuring the new deal with USA, and then that huge $1 billion Peacock deal. You know, they're making more money than they've ever made, but it's not necessarily like they're appealing to their fan base and their actual fans. They're appealing to big businesses. They're making their money business to business as opposed to like business to consumer.
Right. And the consumers, the fans, they're upset about it. You know, they are not speaking highly of WWE product for months, maybe even a couple years at this point. You know, they've kind of soured on it. Like they're kind of harsh, and so they're turning to other promotions, and they're getting involved and invested in the way that they used to be involved and invested in WWE. Now, you know, these other promotions have appeal.
I mean, we're asking them. I mean, like WWE is asking them to watch a lot of programming a week.
Lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. It's a
Hours
big
and
commitment.
hours of it.
You know, and that's in the big scheme of things. That's just the tip of the iceberg, because then you have stuff that is social media exclusive. You know, you want to watch the network, and you're asking them to watch all this stuff, but they want to feel like if they're going to dedicate all this time to you and they're going to give you their eyeballs for X amount of hours or whatever, they want to be rewarded at the end with a payoff. And I think that's where they've lost their way to a degree. And I feel like AEW really does that. Like when you watch, and if you get emotionally involved in a story, you're going to get a payoff. And it's going to be appropriate. And we try and do it in a way now. And even for me, I'll admit it, because, you know, when I was doing Broken Matt, you know, that was a larger-than-life, supernatural type persona and character. The AEW fans are just more focused on, like, more based in reality. You know, so I adjusted. You know, like, it would have been a different story if I would have debuted in front of an audience. I debuted on the first ever pandemic empty arena show at AEW, so it was very, very, very tough. And there was no gauge of the fans. And a character like Broken Matt, which is like a cartoon character in many ways, really needs a crowd to be successful. So, you know, I'd get back and change it, and I'm totally in the groove and on the pulse of what they're doing now, you know, and it works. And it's one of those things where these fans now, because they have so much insight into pro wrestling, they are very demanding, and they really they want a product that they are going to appreciate, and that they don't feel like their intelligence is being insulted. And if you can give them that, and you can reward them and keep them entertained at the same time, that's where you win in this day and age, in my opinion.
Right. It's something, the thing I find, something as simple as just calling it pro wrestling. They just want it to be pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I love when when wrestling is mentioned, the word wrestling, and
Gets
they
a
pop.
yeah.
Like, it's like, yeah, that's them, that's the fan. Like we don't want sports in it. We want professional wrestling.
And it is great to hear that term used, because that is what it is. That is what it will always be. And, you know, there was just, for so long, Vince has just kind of seen that as a dirty word, or like, you know, that word,
which I never understood.
That word is beneath us. You know, let's do something else. And I get that, and I can respect that he has a vision, and he has this mold of this product that he wants to create, and it's sports entertainment. It's larger than life, and you know, you can't hate him for doing that, because he has contributed so much to the pro wrestling industry.
Right.
And you know, when it's all said and done, at its core, it is going to be pro wrestling. Because, you know, you can change the name, you can change the way it's done a little bit, but at the end of the day, it is pro wrestling, a very unique form of athletics and showbiz combined. And for AEW to go all in, yes, this is pro wrestling, and it's something I heard just a while back. Tony was back at the go position, and they were going, yes, and this is for so-and-so in the TNT championship title. He's like, call it a belts. We're saying championships too much. Call it a belt. You know, and that's another word Vince hates, but I mean, he grew up as a fan, and he likes and digs all that terminology.
Right.
And I love that it is implemented in there, because I feel like the fans just, you know, especially our fan base, they feel like they're more at home, and they feel like, yeah, this is cool. These people are like listening to us. They're catering to us.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed with the fans is that they really have a lot of nostalgia for the Attitude Era, which I know you were a part of, you know, and they like that unpredictability and that excitement. You know, when they turn on the TV, what is going to happen tonight? Who's going to do what? And so I think that's something that like AEW has really brought, like who's going to show up? Who's going to do this? You know, and so they've gotten those fans who kind of checked out, you know, during the PG era. And it's kind of, you know, they have that nostalgia for that time. Maybe that was when they first got hooked into wrestling, and now they want something that takes them back to that. So this is like a great time for them. It's like their golden age, you know?
Absolutely. And I do agree with that. And I think in pro wrestling, there is so much knowledge out there about pro wrestling. You can't really like fool people because they don't understand what's going on in pro wrestling now. So if you can be unpredictable, that's the best thing in any story. When you don't know what's going to happen next and you're on the edge of your seat. I'm a big series TV mark now. I love watching great series, and I was working so hard from like 1998 to 2011. I never watched, and I just recently in the last year I've probably watched The Sopranos. I watched The Wire, which a lot of people here in Baltimore got love for. Amazing. Both of those were just incredible. And I just finished The Shield right now. Actually just finished the last episode of that series as well. And just whenever you watch these shows and like sometimes like, oh, where you and you get that's what you want. That's what you're watching for because you want to be emotionally invested and not knowing what's going to happen. And I feel like WWE in some ways they kind of have just got slack. It's like, well, there's no other ball game in town. We can kind of do whatever we want to do.
We want to because you'll
already
watch us for lack of anything better to watch.
And we've already got this money coming in from these networks and Peacock. So and then AEW and everyone there, we are trying as hard as we can to make it as unpredictable and take a story one way, but then all of a sudden it takes a drastic turn. But it makes sense because we've planted seeds in the past, as far as storytelling goes. So I do take a lot of pride in that, and I think everybody from top to bottom in the whole roster is doing a great job at trying to cater and listen to what the fans want.
And I think it shows in the ratings. They've been climbing every single week. There was a little period where things were kind of down low, and then with everything that's been happening, the ratings have been climbing every week.
Yeah, they've been doing great, and like the last 2 weeks in the demo, we've beaten Raw, which is a big deal. I mean, that show's been around 30 years.
Right.
Legitimately 30 years. And to do this in a couple years in, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Speaking of TV shows, have you watched Heels?
I have.
Yeah.
I actually just got caught up. Obviously, Sunday there's a new episode. I'm up to speed. I've seen everything through Sunday, and I'm digging it.
I am too.
I got to chat with Stephen Amell in Raleigh at the Raleigh GalaxyCon for a little while. We talked shop for a little while, and I'd met him a couple times in the past, but just talked about the show a little bit, talked about some CM Punk a little bit, and he was telling his wife, he said, well, these are the guys that were the Hardy Boys. They did all these crazy things and the ladders, and I don't know how they're walking. And this tape, when he knew certain bumps and stuff. And it's cool. You can tell, how he digs pro wrestling so much, like from a fan perspective. And he's like, well, my wife is kind of threatened. Like if I ever wrestle again, I think she's going to leave me. Like she don't want me getting hurt anymore. After he got banged up, he's like, I just don't see how you guys do it. I said, you got the good gig, man. They call him the stunt man for you guys.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as I heard that the premise was two brothers, I immediately thought of you and Jeff. And I was just like, that's like, I don't know. It just reminded me of that. And I was like, I can't wait to watch it. And then I didn't watch it the first week it came out. And then I started the second week, and I'm all caught up now. But I'm liking it so far.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it too. And there are a lot of things in there that remind me and feel very reminiscent of Jeff and I in so many ways. Jeff was always, especially after with WWE, he was always just like the charismatic, most athletic, acrobatic guy, and people loved him, like the brother. But then, Matt was kind of the brains behind the whole deal, whatever. And, they kind of have a little gig like that, how, Stephen Amell is the heel, but he's like the booker, and he puts all the shows together, and his brother's the one that always wants to be beloved because he's the one that's like naturally loved or whatever. And it's also in like a very rural town where we grew up in Cameron, North Carolina, in the middle of nowhere. And, theirs is based in somewhere in Georgia. And there was a scene where they climbed up the water tower, and they were actually sitting on there. We used to do that like when we were kids. Crazy. We'd sneak over to Cameron and climb up the water tower and hang out.
It had like that small town Southern style to it, the whole neighborhood and just the, and I grew up in rural Western Maryland. So, we had water towers and we had, the dirt bike racing and drag racing and stuff like that was always a big, weekend event for us, and independent wrestling.
And I got to tell you too, like speaking of that, I just mentioned The Wire earlier, Chris Bauer, who was in season 2 of The Wire and also in True Blood, which is also another show that I really thoroughly was entertained by. He's great in it as Wild Bill, like the old school veteran, because it just reminds me.
I was wondering who that was. I just started watching the episode. Yeah.
But just the way he reminds me of the guy, like when we were first breaking in the 90s, like the veterans who were there, and that's like, Jeff and I, we used to be good kids until we got in this pro wrestling business.
Right.
It corrupted us, messed us all up. We were two good kids, man, straight edge.
When did you guys start training? You guys were early, right? Like real young, doing the trampolines and stuff. Right?
Yeah, you had a trampoline championship wrestling or something,
we
right?
did, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we begged our dad for a year to
Mhm.
buy us a trampoline for Christmas, and if we got that, we said, we'll convert it to a rink. You know, we went and cut trees down in the forest and got garden hose and got telephone wire and built ropes around it, and then we're just boing, 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 kind of. We'd see stuff on TV and we'd emulate it, and that's kind of how we trained. And then we met the Italian Stallion and George South, and we ended up hooking with them and doing some of their shows because they needed a few more guys to actually go to WWE, and we technically were never officially trained.
That's awesome.
Wow.
And then like it got to the gig where we went to that WWE the first time, and then we would work with Stallion and George South just like every weekend. They would work every Friday and Saturday. We'd drive North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, wherever it would be, and we'd make their shows. We'd work for them for free, but then we would go every 3 or 4 months to WWE, and whenever we'd get $150, each of the 3 nights we do Raw with Superstars and a challenge, we get $150. We had to turn over $100 for a booking fee. That was what they charged.
Oh, for getting them to book in. Yeah.
That's a true story.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, that's where a lot of the inspiration for my Big Money Matt character came, especially when I started about doing the thing with Private Party in the beginning, and taking 30%, because they legitimately took 66% of our money
Right.
when we would go to WWE those days. 66%.
Right.
In WWE, they would give them, say, okay, well, here's cash. We'll pay for double rooms for all your talents. They'd stick 4 or 5 people in a room,
Yeah. That was
pretty amazing.
That's how a lot of those older guys did it.
Right.
That is.
Bob Starr and guys. Bob Starr, when he'd take guys from WCW, he did the same thing, and he'd get Bob, Bob.
Yeah, of course.
Bob would get a lot of guys from Baltimore to go down to the WCW tapings, and he did that. I think Dwayne Gill even did that too when he'd take guys to go.
So
that was the thing.
Those guys too, they would get a wee fee. To book you.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll hear more about that and talk about what else you're doing these days. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Wonderful.
Show your support for the MCW Cast while sporting some great gear by going to teespring.com/stores/MCWcast. You can pick up a full line of official MCW Cast merchandise, from coffee mugs and face coverings to t-shirts and sweatshirts. Visit teespring.com/stores/MCWcast. Fuel the MCW Cast by visiting buymeacoffee.com/MCWcast. And for just $3, you can buy the cast a coffee. Or you can choose to become a member of the cast for just $5 a month and get several additional perks. That's buymeacoffee.com/MCWcast.
She just tweeted 5. Yeah, it's insane. The dirt sheets were reporting like, congratulations to Matthew and Rebecca Hardy. They're having child number 5 on the way. Like the funny thing is, this was like somewhere between the 3-week and 4-week mark after she just had our 4th child, our baby girl, which I think that's humanly impossible.
Which is
to have
what
a baby
I was
that early.
when they text me that, I said, she just had a
Right.
baby,
Yeah.
I think.
April or something, right?
Yeah.
April?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. No, the baby.
The baby. Wait.
The baby was July.
July. Oh, I don't know why I was thinking April.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Okay.
So it was still like right at the end of July, August, and they're like, "Oh, congratulations on number 5." So we had me and her, the kids had went to bed, and it was a night, and we'd had a little alone time, and we were hanging out a little bit. And at the very end of it, I said, "Oh," she said, "Whoa, it feels like it's been a while, especially since I've been pregnant, the baby, whatever." I said, "Oh yeah," I said, that was a good one. I said, "I can tell you right now, that's number 5." And she said, "Shut up! You called it." She said, "Don't you say that? Don't you say a word." And then she would just die laughing for the next couple of days, just with my delivery and the way I said it. And then like the next day or so, she put like number 5.
Yeah.
And she said, "I just had to tweet that because of your joke," and that killed me.
Yeah.
And then like they took the story and ran.
Yeah,
with
the
it.
sheets ran with it and everything.
There's nothing like the internet. They love to pick up a good story and run with it.
So House Hardy, there's
Add some layers to it.
4 now, right?
Yeah.
4.
Yeah.
Oh wait. So the 5 was not.
It was a rib. It was a rib.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. I thought we were.
Biology here.
I got you.
Yeah.
So only 4, because I was gonna say, wow, you're rivaling the Briscoes.
Yeah.
Now
God,
that would
right?
pop them
Yeah.
out like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think you gotta go 2 or 3 months, right, before you can start getting those eggs to come out.
Yeah.
I think
I mean,
that's,
you're supposed to.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
I mean, it definitely happens, but it's
My father was the youngest of 13.
Oh, wow.
That's impressive.
There was 13 brothers and sisters. So
I mean, families were a lot bigger back then,
Back
right?
then,
That's
yeah.
how. My dad had 9 siblings. I
Oh,
would say,
really?
and then my mom was 9 or 10 as well. They both had
Yeah.
big families. We were even talking about that. Like why do we think it has changed so much? And like there's just so much more going on now. Like
Kids
Right.
are expensive.
and I think probably cost,
Yeah.
like I mean,
and that was a factor we said too. I mean,
Yeah.
kids are just so much more expensive
Yeah.
in this day and age.
Yeah.
I mean,
than it was then.
I think your typical like middle class family, I don't know if you could do it on one income. Like it was 4 of
Right.
us, and just my dad worked in insurance sales, and we were just we had food on the table, and we weren't wealthy by any means, but a food on the table and a roof over our heads. But my mom never worked. She never
Right.
had to. My dad. And I don't know if that's really possible nowadays for your typical. I
Yeah.
guess
Mhm.
most
Yeah.
people.
That's
probably
right.
not possible.
I mean, it really is the cost of just living has gone up so much,
Yeah.
and I feel like probably back then, there wasn't as many forms of contraception, I guess, and then
Right.
and then
Mhm.
too probably you probably had a man who was like working and the wife at home. There was probably just like, okay, well, let's
What
have
are we gonna
kids.
do?
Yeah.
What are we, right?
gotta
I mean,
keep
they're
busy.
one.
Yeah.
Okay, do you guys want to play video games? That doesn't exist.
Yeah, none of that
Right.
existed, right?
Right.
It wasn't,
You know,
wasn't so much to
You
do.
want to pop in a DVD? That wasn't around. It's just like such a different world. It
Yeah.
was just, like we may have had television in that day,
Right.
somebody, or they listen to radio, whatever, so, and it was just like, oh, well, let's have kids. We don't have a lot to do. Now there's more than enough stuff to do. Too
Right.
much stuff to do.
Now, are your kids into wrestling?
They are.
I know
yeah.
your oldest has been on the shows.
Yeah,
but like, are they,
yeah. Oh,
does he still like it?
he's got a big head now. He's
Because he's a superstar
he
at
wants
like
two jobs,
age 2,
thinks he's a
sure.
big deal because he's undefeated. He said, "I'm not, Dad. I'm
He's
not
number 1.
I'm not coming in unless I get a push right off the bat."
Yeah.
He still does. He has interest in other things now where he's not set what's going on. But my 4-year-old Woofy, who's he's the most aggressive child I feel like we have of them all. He's very much athletic, but I think he has a lot of my wife Rebby's attitude as well too.
Mhm.
But he's just like I said, what are you gonna do when you get bigger? Because Max was like, well, I might do this, I might do this, I might be a wrestler, I might do this, and he's like, I am gonna be a wrestler. My name is gonna be Woofy Hardy, World Championship Wrestler.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah.
My nickname's Woof.
He's gonna-
He's been around 4 years old. He's still
All
getting
right,
the promo.
all right.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, the kids of the workers here have their own little federation because, we do the birthday parties and everything.
Right.
We do the shows. So they would be here for 8 hours a day. And they just form their own little federation. And so they put it on YouTube. It's called Random Kids Wrestling. And, they all have been working on their characters for what? It's been like 5-6 years now, and they're out there. They have all these people. They have lots of followers and stuff. And they just put up content. They have booking calls. They get on, Twitch and they get on Discord and they'll have group calls with each other. And they book things. They do promotions. They got T-shirts printed, posters, you name it. And they're like, they range in age from 5 to 12 at the time. Now I think the oldest one is 15. But yeah, they're very, they've been around it their whole lives. And so they're the second generation, and they have their own little space. It's really pretty cool.
Yeah, it's crazy how on top of technology they are, right?
Oh my
Especially
gosh,
younger kids
yeah.
now. It's even like, so my brother, for instance, like obviously been here many times, Jeff Hardy. People may have heard of him. He's a pretty well-known wrestler.
He's
And,
over a little bit.
yeah. And he's so funny. Like he would get an iPad. His daughter's 10 now, Ruby. And he's like, oh, well, I really don't know. How do you get it on this if you're supposed to do Netflix? She's like, oh, come on, Dad. Ugh.
Yeah.
And he's like, but I don't understand. How do you find this on YouTube? Dad. Show him, just get on the whole thing. Says, like, well, I just kind of do this, Twitter and Instagram thing. Like, I just want to show my face paint off. That's it. He said,
Yeah.
I'm really proud that I painted real nice. He's like, how do these kids know all this? And he was
Yeah.
dying sometimes at the boys, like Maxwell and Wolfie, my 6-year-old and 4-year-old, they had their switches. Yeah, this is how you do this, and and you do like this, you YouTube. And he's like, oh my God, like I don't know how to do any of this.
Yeah.
Like, wow, how are these kids so much smarter than I am?
I know my
Right.
daughter's 11. She's the same way. She shows me stuff. She'll
Yeah.
snatch my phone out of my hand sometimes if I'm trying to be like that. This.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, how do you know that? You know?
I'll come downstairs and my youngest will be sitting there. He'll have the TV on and he's playing a game. Then he's got the headset on. He's talking to his friends. He's got his Switch plugged in too, and they're doing something different on that. And then he's got his phone where he's FaceTiming people. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, and he's like, I got it, Mom. I got it. This is just what we do. And I constantly just hear him talk. I don't know who he's talking to. Like, he's talking to 87 different people. And I'm like, what are you doing? But that's just how they know how to do it, you know? And it doesn't even phase him. Like, that's just normal.
And it is normal in the stands.
It is, yeah. And it's very social for them, too.
Well, think about the society that their kids are going to be stepping into. If they're right where they are now, their kids are going to be so far. It's going to be ingrained in them.
I'm sure they'll be
They're
robots.
going to be AI kids.
That's where I was going with that.
Living in the
Fully
Terminator
AI
age.
kids. Yeah.
They'll be sitting at this table getting like, yeah, you know, we've had 18 robots.
Yeah.
They're just so much easier than kids.
They don't
And, you know, my
they
wife
don't
didn't
have
get
to
any
go to
stretch
school.
marks.
They can.
Yeah.
You just put in a new SD card. You know,
Exactly.
just reprogram them. And you graduated. Okay, great.
Oh my God, yeah, just the way technology has come so far, so fast. Especially like, I mean, we're all living in this era where it's just like the golden era of technology, right? Like everything is happening, everything possible. And it makes it even more more crazy that we had this whole pandemic situation, that we were in such a golden age of technology. And you seem like, no big issue like this, especially a global issue, could even happen without somehow being stopped in some way, because we just know how to do everything. But like, God, like 20, 30 years from now, I mean, who knows where we'll be at?
Yeah.
Right.
Who knows what'll be happening?
Larry, before we get on, before we started, you were talking about Matt's tights.
Oh, I was talking about
when
the
they
fashion.
first started the
yeah,
fashion.
the
We were
fashion.
having a conversation. And didn't
Yeah.
you used to make those, right?
did.
You used to make those tights?
I did.
So for you and Jeff, when you started, that's back when, I mean, that goes back to when, like, I met you, like, wrestling on the North Carolina Indies, which is how I got to know you guys, and then brought you up here to MCW in the 1990s.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, mid 90s, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, like, stuck out. I remember because, you talk about technology. There was none.
Right.
In the 90s, there was no social media, so, like, you didn't have, nowadays, kids and guys getting on wrestling, and they put clips on YouTube and social media and Twitter and Facebook. Like, so there was none of that. So you would read about some people sometimes on the dirt sheets if you were into them. But I was just getting really used to them because I was never a dirt sheet guy. I was just a wrestling magazine guy. Like, you just traveled around on indies and you'd see people like, oh man. And that's what, like, what stuck out immediately with you guys back then, not just the stuff you were doing in the ring, but like your tights. It's like, man, these guys, I got to get them up to Baltimore.
Yeah, that part of our deal too. Like, I mean, our mom died young of cancer when we were coming up, and we were raised by our dad, and our dad was a tobacco farmer. We weren't wealthy at all. We were a very poor family, so to say. And then he had a part-time job working as a rural letter carrier, which is a mailman in general. And eventually, later on, as we got a little older, he got a full-time job doing that, where he made pretty decent money, had good benefits and everything. But during that time, when we were trying to get in wrestling, I mean, we were just young kids, just coming. I was just at high school, whatever. And I was like, well, we really don't have money to buy tights, So I put out my mom's little sewing machine and dusted it off, and like. Started messing around with it and taught myself how to sew. And then I went and bought a pattern for tights, and then I had to change it a little bit so it would fit us. And then I would go to Walmart or Kmart, and I was like, can I find the craziest design that really stands out and it's really unique, and I'll try and make that into some tights. And then I would put an inspirational word on each one. Right. There was still those tights that, hope and faith, the ones that we debuted on when we won our first match. That was just kind of like who we were to begin with. We were these really good quality human beings that were very inspirational until this wrestling business messed us up.
Right.
All right, your outfits definitely did get attention, but I have to bring up something that happened. This was back in 2000. I don't even know if you remember this, but when Jeff would take off his shirt, the crowd would go crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And we were interviewing you at Access for, I used to do Wrestle Talk America with Devious Doc. And you remember we were up there and there was a big glass room and we were doing a live radio show. And Jeff stood up and took off his shirt, and down below us was everybody at Access. And they were just staring up at you guys and they lost their minds. Like, your clothes were cool, but being out of them was really over with them. So I wanted to bring that up. Like, that's always stuck out in my mind that you guys weren't even down there on the floor. And that was, I think, the first Access that they had. And it was back in 2000. It was WrestleMania. It was out in California.
Yeah.
And Yeah, it was just crazy. They went nuts for him taking his shirt off. And that was
Jeff's always been a sex pot. They love him.
Always pleasing on the eyes. I remember that you were featured a lot of the times. Those colorful tights. They would get the photographs in the PWI before I really knew who the Hardy Boys were, and I would be like, look at these guys in those funky, kind of headband and hippie-ish like kind of gear. And to me, it was really just kind of full circle when you got with a private party, because I knew those guys from the New York scene and the New Jersey scene, and they, as well as they were kind of getting their skills and their on the ground running, would always come out with this sort of fly, eye-catchy, like, look at these guys' gear. I want to be photographed with them. It's just, setting them apart from the pack. So it was awesome to see, you at the point in your career that you are with a young tag team that also the girls scream when they come out and they take off their tuxedo jackets or whatever their gear is too. So, it sells.
It is so cool. And they're both such great guys. I love both those guys so much. And it's funny because it kind of plops me right into that Michael Hayes role, just being a mentor.
Yes.
Except I can still go out and have a 4-star match, brother.
Well, Michael Hayes did one time team with you guys, didn't he? There was one paper.
He did, but he was washed by that point. No, Michael went out and he really busted his ass, man, and did try hard. But between his he'd had a back injury and back surgery. He was. His in-ring career was pretty much coming to a close at that time. So it's still cool that I can go out with him and I can still perform decently, I guess so to say.
Yeah.
Because it's so much fun, and I love doing 6-man tags with those guys.
Now, that's one of the things that is my favorite part of AEW. You get to see a guy like Tully actually mix it up every once in a while. I was watching some brawl that was going on, and Tully was throwing shots and taking shots. He was like on the patio rolling in some flower bed, and I was like, wow, who would have thought you ever got to see Tully Blanchard in prime time in 2021 mixing it up? And that's one of the things that I always thought was the best part about wrestling.
How about FTR coming out with Tully's help? Pile driving Sting last week. That was that was crazy. I mean, that's one of those things.
I didn't see that.
Spike pile drive. Like the old Brain Busters.
Yeah.
And then next week, and those guys are so jacked for it because they're such a big fan of that NWA era where Sting first started, and obviously the Brain Busters, that's their style, old school. But just you have FTR versus Sting and Darby Allin, and Sting is the best, man.
Yeah.
I mean, even for someone like me who's a little older and definitely have way few more years in front of me than I do behind me. Sting is just so inspirational that he's an older guy and he's still out doing his thing right now. And I'm so happy for him because he's such a good dude. And he's getting to write the final chapter in his story and do it on his own accord, his way, as opposed to the WWE thing, which, if that would have been the last, it was kind of like, it's like a letdown.
It was.
It was because Sting was one of my favorites as a kid.
Same here.
So, it was like that. It was disappointing, even though we're much older now.
You got 2 matches.
It still was like, oh man, this is going to be it. For him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was too. I was just disappointed. Like this is, once it kind of announced that they weren't going to let him wrestle again. It was like, oh, come on, man.
Yeah. I still can't believe they didn't pull the trigger for a Undertaker versus Sting.
We all can't believe that, Matt. What is going?
I mean, that's a match people want to see, and if you do it, you can do it right. I don't care if you like it or don't like it. It's just that's a fact.
Right.
It's a profitable deal. Yeah. And one of the first things Sting said after he was at AEW, he said, "Man, I got to tell you." They showed me the match you guys had, the Stadium Stampede, where you went in the water and you came out and you were like a different chemical. He said, oh, my God. He said, that stuff was so great. And he was just going into the whole thing. He said, I think I'm going to do some of those while I'm here. He said, but, I feel pretty good. I think I could do a couple of regular ones, too. And I was like, really? I said, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Because he's had a clean bill of health from his doctor. And his neck's been good, healing. And I'm just so happy to see him getting to go out on his own terms.
Do you think that with guys like WWE, again, that's just because, I mean, the size of the company, maybe just kind of being overprotective? Because, you always heard that with Bryan, where Daniel Bryan had multiple doctors, qualified doctors, clear him, but WWE was still
didn't want to risk it.
No. Yeah. Even though he went to multiple doctors and was like, no, he's good. But they were like, nah.
Because Sting suffered the neck injury, and to see him spike pile drive, and I was like, wait.
But then you see Edge come back.
Another one,
once it got cleared. So it's kind of like, Well, you know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah,
Like,
well,
I guess
that was one of those things too. I think like if they hadn't have cleared Edge and let him wrestle, he was going to end up at AEW. So
Yeah.
Right.
so they
Yeah.
kind of had to go. Oh,
Yeah,
if we want him to go, we gotta let him have his way.
yeah,
And then like it's one of those things where, I mean, I guess because they're a publicly traded company, they have to answer to other people. They just really don't want to take any unnecessary risk.
right.
And I feel like if you're a performer there, that sucks in some way because
Yeah.
you might not get the opportunities you really want. I mean, that's Vince in his mind. I know from speaking to him and other people. I mean, he saw me moving into a role as like a producer and being more of like someone backstage helping people. And I was like, well,
I'm not ready for that. Right?
yeah, I can do this for a few more years. And it's like, first and foremost, it's a lot more money if you're wrestling. And plus, I just love this.
Right.
This is like, for whatever time I can do this for, I want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give away my last few good years of doing this. Especially if I can contribute and help out somewhere. And then even before I re-signed, they're like, okay, well, we've rethought, we're going to let you do it. We'll do this down, and then maybe we'll put some on the end. And I was like, I mean, you guys have kind of stooged off already. I mean, if you see me in a certain role, that's the role I'm going to be in. I mean, that's how it is with
Right.
WWE.
Right.
You have to know when Vince sees you in some certain way, that's how you're going to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, and they've been pretty clear about that. There's kind of an age ceiling at that
Oh, yeah,
company.
for
you
sure.
know, I mean, they've been very upfront about it.
Yeah.
It's significantly lower for women.
Right,
and
right.
I don't know. I mean, because obviously you can still go. Guys can still go. I mean, like you brought up Sting. I mean, to say, oh, you can't do this, or we're not going to push you, or we're not going to give you a spot because you're this age, I don't know. I think they've wasted opportunities that way.
They absolutely have. I mean, and I really think, once again, one of the most amazing things about pro wrestling is that we're in control of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have equity in a guy who's a little bit older and he can still contribute, like, why wouldn't you book him in a specific way where you can maximize?
Right.
And that's what Tony Khan does so well. He understands, like, we can get the most out of this person by doing this. And I'd say the same. I was like, this is where I think it works best. Da 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 da. And he's open to listen. He's always accessible. And even like this deal, I spoke to Dan months ago about this, and then I said, okay, well, I'll let you know as we get closer. And then they started Rampages live, and they knew they were going to do this for a while. And they had the first couple live, and then some of them are going to be pre-recorded. But then once in a while, they're going to pop in a live one, even if it's before a pay-per-view or before like a Saturday event or whatever. So he's like, well, just please don't take bookings anymore on Friday. And then it was like about a week out, and I spoke with Tony, and he's like, okay, the show, it's for a good cause. I know you're doing it for your friend Bruiser, and they're honoring his memory. So, yeah, I'm cool with doing that,
Awesome.
And he had just a couple things. He's like, do this, do that, and then I'm very cool with you doing the show. So, and he has a great respect for independent wrestling, too. I mean, one of I think the wisest decision he's made, he's called often like Dark, the show that is on Tuesday on YouTube. He said, that's like my developmental. He said, because I'll take guys that are new and young and they can gain wins and gain experience on the show, but then I bring in top guys from all the independents and they can come in and work with them, and then I can look at them. He says, as opposed to like having someone at a performance center, you actually see them in action. They go work at whatever their independent regional promotion is, and they learn their craft. And and make it better, and then you come to Dark, and then he gets a good idea of like where this person's at, and it's kind of like his idea of developmental, so to say. And so many people have been hired that have come in just to be TV talent.
We've had several of our roster guys do AEW Dark matches.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and it creates a good little buzz for them.
Yeah, it
you
does.
hear it. It
does.
creates a buzz for them. It helps them. It helps build their equity on the indies.
Right.
Because it's good. It gets really good viewership, and then it's like, oh, they're on AEW Dark. Maybe their AEW's got their eye on them. So I think it's good all around for the business.
Agreed.
And it gives the little rubski to the company that a lot of
Yeah.
these guys that are getting the opportunity, you
Yeah,
find
yeah.
out, oh, this guy's from ICW or GCW. We're going to talk a little bit more. We do need to pause for internet station identification, but stick with us right here. We'll be back with our special guest, Big Money, Matt Hardy.
We hope you're enjoying this week's episode of the MCW Cast. At MCW Pro Wrestling, much like many small businesses throughout the country, the pandemic has presented many challenges. For a company like ours that hosts events with live audiences, the impact has been even more severe, and all of our forms of revenue have been cut off. In order to continue to engage with our fans on a regular basis, we made the decision to begin to produce the MCW Cast and are providing it for absolutely no cost on Facebook Live, Twitch, YouTube, and SoundCloud. If you'd like to support us during these challenging times, you can do so in several ways. The most popular way is to buy us a coffee to help fuel the cast. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/MCWcast, and for just $3, you can buy the cast a coffee. Or you can choose to become a member of the cast for just $5 a month and receive several special perks. That's buymeacoffee.com/MCWcast. You can also contribute directly on Cash App, MCW Wrestling, or on Venmo, MCW-Wrestling. You can also show your support for the MCW Cast while sporting some great gear by going to teespring.com/stores/MCWcast to pick up a full line of official MCW Cast merchandise, from coffee mugs and face coverings to t-shirts and sweatshirts. Also, don't forget to comment in the threads on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch to get your questions answered on a future episode. And you can also send us a tweet using the hashtag AskMCWCast. Thank you for your support, and now, back to the show.
All right, we are back with Big Money Matt Hardy. So, man, one thing I want to say to you, and I know I've said this to you over the years, is but I really do mean it. Like, I started using you guys in the mid '90s before you got signed in WWE, and I've always been a big defender of the Hardy Boys because you guys have always been so good to me and to MCW. Like, you've always come back. For big shows, even times like, do you remember that when that snowstorm happened and we were canceled? We had to cancel, and I had like 800 tickets sold, and it was you and Jeff. And the reality is, like, you guys are really humble. You're really, really humble, because the reality is there's no replacement for the Hardy Boys. You know, when you got Matt and Jeff together, you know, especially it's always special. So I was like, oh my God. And then the only other weekend that was open was Valentine's Day weekend. And I was like, oh God, I don't know if Rebby's going to allow this. And she did. And you guys, like, so you always been good. And I was like, man, I guess we're going to have to refund like 800 tickets. 900 tickets. But you guys made the adjustment. You guys have always come back and worked things out, even like this show here with Bruiser Strong. And I really appreciate it, man, because you've always been good, and you've never kind of forgotten, and it means the world to me. You know, you're 25 years later. So
thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And those are very kind words. And for you, once again, thank you for giving us those opportunities at the very beginning in the early 90s. Like, I remember, it's funny, we're talking about PWI and being magazine guys earlier on. We were the same. We were all about the magazines, and, you know, I wasn't even aware of the dirt sheets at first. Jeff and I were two marks out there bouncing around our trampoline trying to teach each other how to wrestle. But like PWI, once we were doing Omega and we were doing, you know, our promotion, the airlines were like, man, we're doing some good stuff. We're doing some good shows. Like, you know, man, let's check the PWI. Let's see if our names are in the rankings. And every time we'd look in there, all you would see is Reckless Youth. You know, Devin Storm was like, what the hell? Come on, what does it take to get us in here? And we're like, brother, these guys, they're embedded. They're in the Northeast. Right, they're good. They're around that Philly area, New York area. That's the people with the coverage. They don't come south of the Mason-Dixon, brother.
Yeah, and it really was. It really was. I get
really
guys in, like, Mickey James will always say, like,
it's hard to get exposure.
I got her in. You had to get in with, like, Bill Apter.
Right.
And like Brandy.
Brandy.
She was a key. Brandy's a key.
Yep.
And then it was just like, you know, and it was tough to get her to come to Maryland. So, but, you know, they did. But yeah, it was just these little area, and Pro Wrestling Illustrated covered them, and you really had to get in. But like Devin Storm, Ace Darling, they loved
Ace
them.
Darling,
there was a couple that they loved that they would get in. So.
Yeah, I remember we all drove up there and did like a photo shoot for them.
Yeah,
that was up
Mickey.
in Philly.
I took Mickey.
It was Mickey. We had a whole car full of people in my car. Yeah, because Mickey had those spikes, and they were in the back of my car, and I hit the brakes. And if you've never ridden in a car with me, I hit the brakes at the last minute, and those spikes went flying forward.
That was when she was Alexis Lurie.
Yes, she was Alexis
Super Bowl.
Lurie. Yep.
Alexis Lurie.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had some of our guys that were, you know, like we were trying to still build our promotion too, and they would send the results to the magazines and different sheets, or, you know, wrestling journalists, whatever it may be. And I just remember, like, damn it, if I see this name Reckless Youth again, because he's everywhere. He's everywhere.
Yeah. Tom Carter. He was good.
Yeah.
He was a talented guy. Did
Yeah.
you ever work with him? Did you ever get a chance to work with him?
No, I didn't work with him, but I was on shows. I want to say the Super 8. I did. I feel like
Okay.
he was
Yeah.
there.
Did Jim bring you guys up? to
Yeah,
Super
we
8?
did, we
I
did a
think you
Super 8. Super 8 '99, I think, right when we started WWE.
Yeah.
Right-
so
right,
around
well,
the time
It was right around the time when we just went on the road because
Yeah.
we signed there early in '98, and then we just got on the road, and months ago they booked us. They'd allowed us to still do some indie dates because we were on that, $300 a week, $300 an appearance, and we could still do some specific dates here and there, which sounds crazy now.
Yeah.
WWE that we could get on because we did a Super 8, and we did a couple year shows after we were there too.
Yeah. I think you did a couple before and a couple
Yeah,
after.
yep.
So a couple before you actually got your deal with the WWE. Do you remember the night with Axel Rotten?
Oh yeah, we were talking about New York, brother.
This is
I do.
That was me as a that was one of the most embarrassing moments for me.
Tell
Do you
me-
remember like I was
you
in
tell.
Yeah.
I cried after. So I kind of got to give you a setup here. The fans will. We've talked about Axel a lot on this podcast, and we've talked about his addiction, but I also give the buffer that Axel, towards the end of his life, was very open in many documentaries about how bad his drug addiction was. So I'm not throwing anyone under the bus.
I think in this little segment we'll say, all right, it's time for Dark Side of the Ring.
yeah.
Dan McDevitt.
right?
So Axel, when he was going up to ECW and he was doing like the barbed wire death and the Taipei glass matches, and he was getting that national exposure and getting a buzz on him as this new like hardcore wrestler in ECW when that was hot, and he was at that point his drug addiction was really kind of getting crazy, and we had started MCW, me and Mark Schrader, like a year or two before, and Axel broke me in and did a lot for me, but he never was like an owner or MCW, but he used MCW to get himself over with a lot of the guys in ECW. So me and Mark, I always talk about, we lost probably like 30 or 40 grand our first couple of years in MCW. We started, we're doing good. We were, busting our butt having shows, but we would just have like New Jack show up, unannounced, and Axel would be like, "Oh, I booked him. Just give him 500." And I would be like, "What?" Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was every show, and Sabu and Chris Candido and Sonny, and he'd be like, "Oh, just give him a grand." And I'd be like, "What do you like do? Like, we're losing money. Like, we can." And so this went on for like 6 or 7 months, and we realized like he's using it and like he's getting himself over with the talent up there. Hey, come, and he's telling them, because I would go up there and do jobs and stuff, trying to get in, and the guys would all say like, "Yeah, Axel's promotion in Baltimore," and I just like, it's not Axel's promotion. You know what I mean? And my partner and me were starting to fight. Me and Mark were starting to argue, and he's like, "Dude, you gotta, like, Axel's gotta stop. He can't just have frickin' Sabu walk in the door and say you gotta pay him $1,000, and we don't even advertise him." So we get in this big fight, me and Axel, and I'm telling him, because it may have been New Jack and Mustafa, if I remember correctly, were coming down. It was and I had went to an ECW show. We were doing a show the next day, and he was like, "I'll be there." And I had like pulled him aside and was like, "Dude, this is not Axel's show. You got to talk to him. I cannot pay you." And it got, and Axel got in a fight, like, "How you make me look stupid, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, whatever. And then things were getting rough with me and Axel. And then it was around that time that I started booking Matt and Jeff. And because I had been doing indies and talking with them, and I brought them up. And Axel, one day after a show, man, it was one night after a show, we were at the Motel 6. And he was messed up, really messed up. And just out of nowhere starts blasting you and Jeff about how, and like burying me for booking them and saying, "I can't believe you booked these guys. These guys are no talent. They don't have any talent. They're never going to make $1 in this business, blah, blah, blah." And he did it to humiliate me.
I think he said they're never going to make a dime.
They never make a dime. He did. He said, "They're never going to make a dime in this
He
business."
belittled us even more.
But it was targeted at me.
Yeah.
Say this to y'all's face.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
he's tore up, and again, that respect factor in wrestling.
Right.
Like Matt and Jeff, they're like, he's Axel Rotten. He's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
On TV.
on
and
TV,
ECW,
ECW.
kinda guy,
They haven't made it
kinda
yet.
guy.
They haven't made it yet, you know. So they're just
So
Matt
you're
and
just
Jeff
taking
indie
it.
guys. They're just taking it.
We're
I'm sitting
doing
there
a lot of
like,
nodding, like
yeah, nodding like okay.
Okay.
And he just went on this tangent.
Yeah, he
And,
really did. He rambled forever.
Oh, was ever. And then I was so humiliated. I left Motel 6. I was crying. Like I was so angry. I was like, I can't believe he just did that. I'm so embarrassed. And I mean, yeah, and I mean, obviously, you guys made more than a dime in the business. But man, that was we still, I mean, here 25 years later, we still remember it. That was probably 95, 96, maybe like mid 90s or late 90s. It had to be.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
96, 97.
Something like
Something
that.
like that. See, he was getting on us too about like, you're up there, going up there doing jobs. They're never gonna do anything.
Try. Yeah.
Smart. Just you need to stop doing that. Stop doing job. And like they were giving us like really like dark matches, and we were having like nice feature matches on TV with a little more time, almost like comparable to how AEW allows their TV talent to do. Like on Dark, if you have a good amount of time, you have a competitive match. And he was just going on and on and on about that. And then I love the story that Jeff Jones tells later. When we saw Axel later.
So I can tell you this too. This is what I was get to, because you know Jeff really well now.
Yeah.
But way back then, you didn't know. So Jeff Jones was that me and Jeff got to know because we were like Axel's young boys.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's how we got to know each other. And even with Jeff, like, because he knew that, because I had remembered like calling Jeff, and I was just devastated. Like, I can't believe Axel said that. So for years after that, we just used to love to needle Axel with that. You know what I mean? And Jeff didn't even know you, but he'd be like, Joe, like, call out, hey, did you see who won the WWF Tag Team titles tonight on Raw, Axel?
Never draw a dime, right?
Matt and Jeff Hardy, Yeah, we needled him for years. Like, we just used that to just dig at Axel every time. Hey, did you see who won the WWF title tonight?
Right? Yeah. Eventually, right?
Did you see who won the WWF United States title? Matt Hardy.
Yeah, I want to say we were
yeah.
I want to say we were in Baltimore right before that, and like the night before I won the U.S. title from MVP.
I think we went out to dinner.
Yeah. And he was sitting there, and Jeff was just, these guys, Axel, you said they're never going to be anything. They're never going to do anything. They're never going to make a dime. Hey, Matt, did you make any money in this business? I was like, oh, I'm just a multimillionaire now.
Yeah.
All right.
I said, and kayfabe, I'm winning the U.S. title tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. Me and Jeff for the last. I mean, every chance we got. It was one of those like I was humiliated that night when it happened, but then I took that out for the next like 10 or 15 years. Every chance I got, I just dug it into Axel.
Especially, I'm sure it changed because your levels of hierarchy kind of kept meeting.
Well,
what I mean?
Well, and that happens, and you know what?
It does,
Again,
and
we
it
talked
always
about
happens in
we talk
wrestling,
about too, and a side note of that is we talk about this a lot is addiction, and people dealing, and I've dealt with it. My father died from addiction. I have other people in my life over the last couple of years. I've dealt with it, and that changes too. Not just the hierarchy, but like. You just get tired. Like people, if you know someone and you've dealt with someone addiction and they don't want to get help and they don't want to seek the help that's needed to get their lives back together, they take and take and take and take. It's always called, one of my closest friends, it's been sober 20 years, and he's helped over 300 people get sober. He always says it's a family and friends disease because it spreads, like in the addict infects all family and friends and slowly, makes them sick too, and it really is. And that was something with Axel over the years. And we've talked about it. He just battling that. He just never got to a point where he never, I guess, hit a rock bottom where he wanted to get it. And so not only the hierarchy in wrestling, but just as a guy's like, okay, this is a friend, but like enough. You just get to, and there was a point where I had to got to a couple years before he died where I just, like, I can't do this anymore.
RJ and I had cut him out too. It was like,
Yeah.
nope, sorry, you can't come over to our house. I mean, because you had to go behind him and see what he stole, you know, or you'd invite him over to watch the pay-per-view, but then he'd be on your sofa for 3 days. There was no in between.
Yeah.
So, it was,
that between the hierarchy and just the addiction, dealing with someone close to you as an addiction, it just, it finally got to. it started definitely going like this. At the time that happened, it was very much like he was here, and I was still like, okay, he's still the guy that broke me in and did a lot for me. But that was definitely one of those things in that moment that it was like, all right, it's like it took a notch out of me. That was like.
Well, we always say that he's got like one of the best. He had one of the best minds in the business, but he was obviously off the mark with you guys. Didn't see your potential.
Way off the
but,
mark.
Way
but,
off.
Other than that, like he really has so much. He had so much respect and was thought, to be pretty brilliant at the stuff he did, but he didn't get it right with you guys.
And it's one of those times too, like you said, with that addiction thing. It is such a thing in wrestling, which guys fall into real easy. Like I've obviously been through my share of it, but like he was just at a place where he was just so altered and just not thinking straight and just like just being angry that night. I just remember thinking like it was the exact almost like textbook definition of like, oh, here's like the old angry bitter guy that's on TV just trying to get mad at the young kids now.
Right.
Jesus Christ, like,
100%. Yeah.
And we're just like looking at our watch like, are you done yet?
Yeah.
Just okay, we'll sit here and take it, but are you done yet? Let's go.
Yeah. So anyway, that was
Dark side of the podcast.
Dark side of the
yeah.
And thank you for joining us, Dark Side of the Ring, Dan McDevitt.
And thanks for coming back to MCW after that.
Man. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I remember the next day, just like I was like almost into like, oh my God, I am so freaking sorry that he did that.
Yeah, and probably thinking they'd never come back.
Oh yeah, I
like,
thought, he totally buried me with him. And
Speaking of coming back to MCW, I wanted to kind of bring up real quick, how when you did come here multiple times, you worked with Bruiser a lot.
Yeah.
And wanted to get you to talk a little bit about that. And, obviously that's the reason why you came back tonight.
Yeah.
And we appreciate that.
I always had, of course, always had great experiences with him. Just a great guy all the way around. And the times we teamed a few times. And just a fun guy to work with, really got it. And just really, you could tell how much he loved this family here.
Yeah.
And how important it was to like take care of everyone here and make sure they're in a safe space and put on the best show possible for these fans. He took a lot of pride in it. And I can relate to that, being a guy that was a booker in Omega and just having to do so much too. I understand what these guys go through, and just it's very hard. It's very challenging to put together a show like this, and especially make it good and put together a great lineup and bring all the fans and keep everybody happy because there's so much stuff that goes into it.
And I've always told you, like I've told you a lot, like RJ looked up to you so much, not just because of what your accomplishments in the business, but he would come to the MCW shows, like when you guys were on them, and so he looked up to you so much, and it meant the world to him that you kind of, like, when you teamed with him, that you looked on the same level. He would always make the jokes to me, and that's how he'd always like say to me like, hey, does Matt realize that me and him are undefeated?
Yeah. that was my favorite joke with him.
Him and Jeff aren't undefeated.
Yeah.
But him and the Bruiser are undefeated.
That'd be the first thing I throw in my promos.
Right, I know that, and when every time you would say that, he would always like light up, because we are. Me and Matt Hardy are undefeated.
I'll tell you this: when we were at WrestleMania 2017, RJ and I went together. We took the kids and my mom, and so when you guys come out, I look over to him, and somewhere I have the video of this. I turn the camera to his face, not you guys, and he just was beaming, And it, we're in this business, so like, sometimes we kind of, I don't know, we just kind of watch it all go by. We don't feel because obviously we're so entrenched in it that it's hard to be a fan sometimes. And for that moment, like the look on his face, like he felt that moment. I mean, the whole arena was shaking. I mean, and I mentioned that earlier in our intro, but it was a powerful moment, and he experienced it. So somewhere I had to dig up this video, but I turned the camera on him because I just wanted to look over at him and just watch him experience that. And of course, you guys had just won our tag team championship 2 months earlier.
Yeah, right.
So it was very fresh, and I think collectively, like he and I both just had like this sense of pride, like, hey, that's our tag team champs over there. But like that was a moment for him that he just was like, experienced it with you, and I just thought it was really neat.
And I text him. You guys were there and had posted pictures, and I remember texting him the next morning. I said, RJ, bro, how hot are you that when you and Matt? You know what I mean?
Yeah, Jeff and I sure went undefeated. There was a good chance we were going to lose.
Right.
You know, if I'd had RJ, we were undefeated. We were on a hot streak. That was a guaranteed W.
Yeah.
But like you said too, that moment of returning to WrestleMania was truly a real, authentic, genuine moment in wrestling. I mean, and for me, it was very important to go back there and like be the consummate professional and do everything, because I hated the way I left when I left there in 2011. You know, but just to come back and have that moment where myself and my brother built up something really special that wasn't a WWE creation. We built up something really special and had like this viral character thing going on, and to have the WWE call us and really, you know, push hard to get us back and, you know, give us a good deal and set us up really good. It was like a moment for us of like closure and happiness. And also I think so many fans and people that are my friends and family, even like with RJ, like, this is cool. You know, you're witnessing a moment. These guys are coming back home to the place that made them, and like they, you know, everything's together and they're doing this, and this is an amazing moment. And so many wrestling fans, I mean, they felt that in their heart, and that's one of the most beautiful things about this industry, that, you know, these moments that are like this are a lot more real than the actual idea you have of like trying to choreograph something to get a great reaction, you know, when it's a real genuine moment, and that really was one.
That's what it's all about, moments. And with that said, we want to thank you once again for joining us here this week on the MCW Cast.
We appreciate you coming in the studio and doing this.
Man.
And we hope to have you right back here in the MCW arena before long, doing what you do as you've done for so many years. For Dan McDevitt, I'm Larry Legend, and the lovely Tara. We'll see you all here next week for another edition of the MCW Cast.
You make me